Fantastic.
Welcome back, everybody.
Mindy
Special Thursday edition of the Square Table Degenerates podcast. We're joined here today by broadcast legend and possibly the only voice in entertainment better than myself, Mr. Shadoe Stevens. How are you today, sir?
I'm excellent and getting better. Every breath is a little bit better.
Every day is a little bit better. Where are you calling from? Or where are you calling from? Where are you at today? You out in California?
Yes, I'm in the Bel Air, California district.
Bel Air, okay. Big mansion out in Bel Air from the town called Bel Air in the Fresh Prince, huh?
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Got a butler and everything, huh?
Oh, sure, yeah, Jules. He comes in and he offers me sweaty socks and cold drinks.
All right, so the internet tells me you were born in North Dakota a couple years ago. First off, is that part correct?
Cattle in the wheat and the folks that can't be beat. There was a song when I was growing up. They had to have a North Dakota state song, and it's probably still the same state song. And it goes like, and this is the winner. You ought to go to North Dakota, see the cattle and the wheat, the folks that can't be beat. You say hello to North Dakota, you just can't say goodbye.
North Dakota, the land of cold lost dreams. Now, is the legend true that you started your own radio station in the attic of your parents' house with a couple of cardboard boxes and a 100-foot antenna?
Well, the 100-foot antenna is right. The cardboard boxes is not quite right. I actually had a desk, and I had wired it so that I had a little mic switch. I had a microphone like this. It was made out of an erector set, and the microphone sat so that I could talk right into it. I had a phonograph and a tape recorder, and I had it all wired together so I could switch off. So I could put on records and play records, and I could have records pre-recorded on tape so that I was able to have a wide variety of tunes at my beckon.
So you were recording records back in so you actually, the first time I ever, I'm only 44, but I don't, so back then we were able to like record records on tapes. You were that advanced with your equipment. Was that because did your dad and them have connections, gives him some stuff to play with, and you just like kind of figured it out? How did it even work?
My uncle owned a couple of radio stations, and he heard that I was infatuated with my dad's tape recorder, a Webcore, I think it was called. And I used to make little shows on the tape recorder, like what are they called? The Flying Saucer. And there would be like the introduction where the flying saucers are real, and they would cut in little pieces of song to be what the flying saucer, what the alien said. And I would make little stories like that. And he heard about it, so he sent me what is called a wireless transformer. And you had to solder it together. So I was good at following directions. I was 10 years old. And so I soldered all this together. And when I had it all working, I took it down to the TV shop. And I asked the technician, how do I soup it up? And he said, well, you got to do this and then this. And I went, okay, I can do that. And he said, you got to have a big antenna. I went, okay. So I crawled up to the top of my house, third story. My parents had no idea. How I'm alive, I don't know. Because I'd lift myself up from the water trough and then climb up the edge and then crawl over to the end. Now I have wire in my teeth and a hammer and a loop. And I would hammer the loop into the side underneath the roof and then turn in the loop and attach the wire to it and then crawl back down and then climb to the top of an evergreen tree in the backyard and put up the other end. So now I had a 100-foot antenna. And now.
Okay. So it was assisted by the tree. I get a tree assist. Okay. I didn't, that part makes more sense now.
Fully grounded, of course.
Okay. Now, did you getting grounded? How the heck did that get in Life magazine? How did that come about?
So now around this time, while I'm broadcasting every day, there was a show there were two local radio stations. And one of the stations had a show called The Man on the Street. And he would just stand out on the street with a microphone and talk to people who came by. And he had the gift of gab, and everybody loved it, and they listened. And I come walking down the street, and he says, "Oh, hey, what's your name? And what are you interested in?" And I go, "Oh, art and radio." And they go, "Radio? Well, So I tell him about my little pirate radio station, and he's fascinated. It's like, how old are you? It's like, well, by this time I was 11 years old. He says, you got to come down and we'll do a show with you. So they put it on, and let me see, where is it? My birth name was Terry. Can you see that?
Yeah, let me make the screen bigger. Hold on. Spin with, hold on. Let me pull it up on full screen here.
This is one of the ads. And they put ads in the paper all the time. One was the world's youngest disc jockey. This one says North Dakota's youngest disc jockey.
Wow. So you still got that bad boy from 60. Oh my God, that's so cool, man. That's so cool. So what did the world's youngest disc jockey thing lead to next in your youth, like career going up to high school? Like describe your broadcasting career from that moment, like up to you got to high school.
Well, I continued doing that through. Well, I grew into being a relief person at the station, so I would do, weekends and summer vacation, or anytime anybody was on a vacation, they would bring me in and I would go do whatever. And you had to do it all. You had to do the news, the weather, the sports, play the different, because it was block programming, as they called it, which means that I would do the rock and roll part, which was a couple of hours, and then do the news, weather, and sports, and then do the Mr. Midnight program, which is kind of a time, to relax and chill, play Montevani and relaxing music. So I did that, and then at the same time I was an artist, so I would draw those monster T-shirts in a mall, like Big Daddy Roth and Mouse, and I copied them at first and figured out how to do it, and then I would sit down in the mall and I would paint these sweatshirts with fluorescent paint and an airbrush, and that was all to make money so I could have a car, because you got to have a cool car, cool car.
All right. So where did you go to high school?
Jamestown High School. Jamestown.
Okay. Right there where you grew up then. Okay. Now, did you do any sports in high school, or was it just strictly the broadcasting? Did you keep going with that?
Yeah, it was kind of the law, when you're in North Dakota, basketball, football, and wrestling and track. And my dad was a big basketball star in North Dakota, and it was like way too much to live up to. So I went into wrestling. The only thing I ever did well, because I didn't have to count on anybody else. But football, I was very okay. I did it because all the guys did it, and track I was just okay too. Wrestling is the only thing I did well.
Did you any ice hockey there, being up in North Dakota? Were you kind of forced into that at all, or nothing?
Yeah, well, everybody loved hockey, and we used to play hockey down on the river, because I lived in a house that was a block away from the park, and so the river freezes over in the wintertime, and there was a warming hut on the side, and so they would clear off part of the river and make it into a big hockey rink, and we would go and play. And it was like an every night thing for a lot of my high school career.
Now, did you follow ice hockey growing up, or was that not really a thing back then?
Well, the University of North Dakota was always a big hockey school. So, everybody followed UND, and that's where I ended up going to school for the first 3 years.
Okay. What did you guys do for fun in the summer? I mean, obviously in the winter you had ice hockey. Did you guys go out and play baseball like the rest of us, or what did you guys do growing up?
At first I played baseball until it got serious, and then people started cursing. And, I was raised in a household where my parents didn't drink, smoke, use drugs, or curse, or raise their voice. And when guys started, cursing, it was like, me out. But this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to do this. But in the summertime, my dad was an entrepreneurial guy. He owned toy stores and clothing stores. At one time, he owned a go-kart track. And he owned all the fireworks stands all over town on the 4th of July. So 5 children, each one had a different fireworks stand that they were responsible for. And then we had all the big fireworks displays on the 4th of July. It was at our house. down a block from the park.
Oh, nice.
And it was pretty fabulous. And we also had lake homes. So there was a lot of water skiing and fishing.
Oh, okay, so you guys were in a lake area, so you could do a lot of water sports there in the summer. Okay,
Yeah.
that's nice. So it's kind of like an extension of Minnesota, almost, just going over there.
Yeah, it's like 100 miles from Minnesota.
Okay. Now, did you have any other colleges in mind besides University of North Dakota, or were you? I looked it up. It's the same school as fullback Jim Kleinsasser, super coach Phil Jackson, and Olympic hockey legend TJ Oshie. If you remember him from the Olympics a couple years back.
Yeah, Phil Jackson was somebody we all knew about. I ended up going there. I was accepted at Art Center School here in Los Angeles and San Diego State. So my parents bring me out. We're going to go see it. And it's like really exciting for me because this is where surfing is and where everything that's cool is. And I came out here and I went to these schools and I thought, everybody is cool in California and they all know that I'm not. And I got really uncomfortable. And I never mentioned going there again. We went back to North Dakota and I went, yeah, I think that I'm going to go locally because, I want to be close to the family. And University of North Dakota seems like a really good thing for me to do. I was really intimidated by big city people, California people, New York people. It's like everybody had their act together and they could talk fast and knew what they were saying and really talk with conviction.
So when you're going through the college, are you still working at radio stations, working yourself through college doing that?
Yeah.
Did you have to hop around to different cities, or are you still working, in around there? Or how did that work?
No, I worked locally and in Grand Forks for a station all during the school season. And then in my third year, I got a job in Fargo, which is a really big boost. There was a very good station in Fargo, KQWB, and they hired me. So I would drive there every day, and that's like 80 miles. I would go to class, I would drive down, I would do a show 1 a.m. I'd turn around and drive back. And I did that for the next year until I got a job in Tucson. And then I went to the University of Arizona for 2 more years. And that I changed from a major in art to a major in drama and journalism. So I learned how to perform and write.
Okay. What was your schedule like that back then? Were you just nonstop working, or did you have time to party, or what was going on there?
It seems I always have time to party. I belonged to a fraternity, Sigma Nu fraternity, and I had a bunch of friends there. And so I found time always to be able to attend the big parties, but I did work all the time. I have that kind of personality. I have a lot of interests and I'm a victim of my own enthusiasm. Let's face it. It's like, got to be doing stuff, got to be doing it all the time, got to do it fast, got to be good.
Hey, yeah. Man, what were the big party spots when you were up in not obviously down in Tucson, we would know, but up in University of North Dakota and up there? Where would you guys go on the weekend? Would you go to Minnesota or just party right there, or what would you guys do?
No, there were big fraternities. You have big fraternity parties.
Okay.
Breakdown and the formals and everything was right on campus. That was pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever have any thoughts of joining the service back then? It never really crossed your mind.
No, but at the time when it came time to be drafted, I was in Arizona at the time, and I went and got a 1Y, it was called, for a bunch of things, I think. Anxiety, stress, hearing from too many years of stuff. And that was fine with me. And I got lucky and didn't have to go to Vietnam.
Okay, well, that's good. That definitely, it was a tumultuous time back then. Did that really affect like how you were growing up? Because my dad's was about rest of soul, but he was same era and stuff like that. Was that just so was that in terms of like your opinion, like back then, the whole Vietnam era, the 60s, 70s, mid 60s through mid 70s era, was that just such a crazy transformative time? We're never gonna see something like that again. I mean, it was such a cacophony. The boomers versus, or no, the boomer, you guys are the boomers, but the boomers versus the older, supposed greatest generation, whatever. I mean, was that, how was that just coming through that, man? Was that just totally wild or what?
Well, we all admired our parents for having gone through what they did, but Vietnam was a whole different deal, and it made people crazy. Are we supposed to be there? And how were people treated when they came home? And they were, I had friends who went there and came back with collections of ears, messed them up big time. And I had another really good friend who I grew up with who, when he came back, just had all kinds of anger issues. And so he would get his girlfriend and they would go to bars and she would let guys come on to him and then he would take them outside and beat them bloody.
Oh, geez, man.
Don't want to go there. It's not a good time.
What sort of music did you start playing back in the beginning, and how did that kind of transform? Was it mainly rock and roll, or just whatever was kind of poignant at the time?
Rock and roll, and for me, it was almost all black music that I loved.
Okay.
Little Richard and Chuck Berry and all of my favorite artists were always black artists. I think maybe until the Beatles came along, and then I loved the Beatles and the Stones and the whole era, the British invasion era. And then I was just addicted to finding new music. It was exciting, like opening a Christmas present, discovering the Dave Clark Five or, the Doors.
Oh, the Doors are great, man. Did you were you into Motown back then in the 60s? Then did you find what point of your I kind of know some of the Motown history, but what point in your career did you cross Motown, and did you kind of find her? Did it come to you? How did that come about?
No, we were able to hear the big radio stations in Chicago and out of Oklahoma City, even New York, at night. So we were all listening to the big cities, and they were all playing all that music, and that was the music we loved. CKLW in Detroit, Windsor, and we could hear them all. And so we had the influence of what was going on in the bigger culture, and black music was the whole deal.
Now this is a random weird question, but did you ever, as a DJ, back then they had records. Did you ever have a record on the air and they start skipping and you didn't notice it right away and it kept playing and then you had to go run up and fix it? Like you're in the back. Did something like that ever happen?
Sure. Or hitting the needle, accidentally across the edge. Good time.
That would 100% be me. I go to grab a coffee and then Now, at what point did you start going by Shadoe Stevens, and how did you come up with your moniker?
It was when I went to Boston, and I left Tucson. I had this big job in Boston with their, the hottest station in Boston. And I was on my way there, and I had been calling myself Jefferson K. Kind of a nice black name, or so it seemed at the time. And I'm in it all plays like a graphic novel. I stop in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and I'm getting gas, and there's a phone booth. So across the street it says Atomic Testing Range, no entrance. I get on the phone. I call him. I say, "Well, I'm on my way." And he said, "Yeah, good. By the way, we're going to change your name. We have a Jess Kane in Boston. We had J.J. Jeffries in Boston, and actually had a guy who called himself Jefferson K some years ago. So we can't use that name. We're thinking of calling you Shadow Man or Shadow Lane." And I thought, that's the worst goddamn name I ever heard in my life. It's humiliating. And yeah, okay, well, yeah. I'll be there in a couple of days, and I'll have some options. Now I'm driving down the road, cross country, start in Arkansas, and I'm thinking Randy Rhoads and Johnny Kane and Lane Stillwell and, God knows what. Anything that would occur to me, I'm writing on a notebook on my lap. I get into Boston. I'm driving into Boston, and and I remember it vividly. And it was night, and it was foggy, and it was sleet and rain, and I'm listening to the radio station. It sounds great. And on it comes a promo. And starting Monday, Shadoe Stevens on 68 WRKO. I was horrified. It's like, oh, it's the dumbest name I ever heard in my life. It's like, what am I going to do? I don't know. I'm freaking out. I go in there and you're serious? It's like, what's this name? No, it's a great name. It's a great name. So every time I was interviewed, I was always, so is that your real name? So what I did is I decided I had to give it a sense of humor. I had to give it a backstory and have a proper answer. So I decided I would tell them this. It would say, so is Shadoe your real name? And the answer is, well, it's Native American. Really? Really? What tribe? And I go, well, I'm from North Dakota, so I would say Sioux or Mandan. I'm not sure, one of the two. It's handed down. Really? What does it mean? I said, well, it means he who walks with the light. Really? Never had to answer it again. So I was happy, chipper, and carefree. And the name actually had an impact on changing me and giving me my sense of humor. And everything that I ever did from that time on always was tongue-in-cheek, a parody, until I got to American Top 40. Because every success I had, whether it was in Boston or in Los Angeles, running radio stations, starting, K-Rock and KMET became a big hit. And everything I ever did on radio was, I create these radio theater environments with a great sense of humor and a lot of parody and a lot of tongue-in-cheek. So I get this job for American Top 40, and it's taking over for the most earnest man in the history of mankind, Casey Kasem.
Casey
Kasem. Truly nice man, and clearly, a visionary. He worked his ass off, and he made this thing a huge hit. But he was earnest. I couldn't fake earnest. So I get this job, and I go in to record the first 4-hour show, and it took 18 hours to record. We had to re-record. We had to rewrite every single line in the 4-hour show because it wouldn't fit my mouth. I sounded like an idiot. I couldn't do it. So I had to weave in a little bit of whimsy. And then even then they would fight me on, because I'd always said, this is your friend in the void, the shadow. See you next week, or whatever. He said, what, void? Void? What's void? It sounds dark. It sounds like spooky. What? No, it's like the infinite universe. It's like your friend out there in the unknown. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So I had to say, it's your best friend, the shadow.
Now, back then in the early days, you alluded to this a little bit, but you mostly going from the town to town, did you drive mostly, or did you ever take the bus or, fly or anything like that? Or was flying kind of not really a thing back then for people of your stature? You know what I mean?
No, it was mostly, I always had a car because I was a workaholic from childhood, from having my own, paper route to having, the radio shows and working at the radio station and doing artwork. And I always had some kind of an income that would allow me to have a little bit better car and then a little bit better car. And then I was like comfortable. And so it was the way to get around. And I've always loved driving. I still do.
All right, now back, you alluded to a paper route. I always bring up paper routes because kids nowadays don't remember that. And I had my paper route back when you were delivering the newspaper. Do you remember how much the paper was that you charged? And did you go to door to knock like I did? Like every door you want to knock, you ask for money? I can imagine a kid doing that today.
I to try and sell subscriptions, and I won a trip to Minneapolis. Went there on the train for the Minneapolis State Fair, just on selling subscriptions. So you go door to door, and then you would deliver the paper, and then you had to go collect. You go.
Oh, I hated collecting. I was so.
Collect.
I delivered it was a plain dealer, Cleveland Plain Dealer. It's not another plain dealer. give me my $2. It was $1.80 for the weekly paper. It was 60 cents for the Sunday and then 20 cents a day. And usually people just give me $2 to give me a whole whopping 20-cent tip. But
Right.
yeah, it was 5 days. But I'll tell you what, though, man, I wish they would have paper outs now because like that gave me I've never had a problem getting up. Like when I was in the service, military, high school, whatever, I've always been able to get up real early. That started from a paper out 7 days a week when you're a little kid getting up every day at 5 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it teaches you responsibility and discipline, and then you get the rewards of it because you have money that other kids don't have, and you can get stuff. And I wanted art supplies, or I wanted, to buy records and so on. And so I always had a way to handle all that.
Heck yeah. What ultimately made you move down to Southern California?
I wanted to live in Southern California from before I came out here and was too freaked out to go to school here. And I kept applying from the radio stations in Arizona and then Boston for like a year. I just send out auditions every week. And then finally, all of a sudden, they hired me to go to what was at the time the biggest radio station, one of the top stations in the country, memorialized by Quentin Tarantino in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, nice.
KHJ was the station at the time. And
when you first got down there, where'd you end up moving? You weren't in Bel Air when you first got down there. Where would you, I would assume,
No, I moved to, at first I moved to Northridge, and I lived there a year, and then I moved to Malibu, and I lived in a house in Las Flores Canyon. And then I got a house in Topanga Canyon. And I lived a bunch of places out in Malibu and Topanga. And then moved to
Did you ever do like get sucked into the disco scene and like the Boogie Nights era as made famous by Dirk Diggler and all that? Was that any of your scene or no? Were you a little too old for it by then?
No, I was, was not a boogie down guy.
Now the music back then, was it I'm assuming you came to be program director pretty quick. Did you get to pick out like every song you got to play in the rotation, or is it like now how it's just a corporate list and you just got to play whatever?
Well, at the time, when I was just a personality, it was, somebody at the music director and the program director would pick all the music, and then you had there were sequences that you would play, and you could pick from different, from the top 10 and from the top 20, and then the new songs, and they had a rotation, it's called. When I was running stations, I incorporated our whole goal at all of the stations I programmed was to find new music. And so we had a music director whose whole job was to find the best of the best that's out there. And we would have weekly meetings, and then everybody would vote on the songs that are the best songs. And then I would come up with a rotation that would assure that they would be heard regularly, along with things that everybody wanted to hear that they knew, which were the hit songs. And then you had kind of free form within that structure. So there was a structure for energy and for like K-Rock. K-Rock was established as all rock all the time, all up, party all the time, 24 hours a day. It's energy and energy. And you could never play more than one ballad an hour.
Nice.
It was like, we're going to party. Because at the time, what was standard in radio was day partying. And the day partying meant that in the morning, you don't want to shake people up too much. And midday, the little housewife doesn't want to get too rattled while she's going around the house listening to the radio in the background. So we've got to have something for the housewives that isn't too jumpy. And then you start picking it up in the afternoon. And then at nighttime, you can really rock and you can bring out all the, the heavy hits. And then in the all night, well, then you got a little more flexibility. Then you start the same thing. So when I started K-Rock, it was all up, all rock, all cutting edge, all the time. So we were the first people to play Queen. We were, all the punk rock, all of that stuff, all started on K-Rock.
Now, would record companies did you have to buy the record? Forgive me for my ignorance. I'm sure it's changed now, but back then, would people send you records? Did the radio station have to buy the records from the people? How did you get the music back then?
No, the record companies.
Okay.
In their interest to get you to play them.
Okay, so they're just sending you free records and say play this, play. Did you get like a bunch of unsolicited records? We're just like, this is kind of garbage, and I'm never going to play this, that kind of thing. Or did that ever
We
happen?
encouraged people to send us, things that they were doing, and including things from the UK. We had friends in the UK would say, "You got to know about David Bowie." I was one of the first people who played David Bowie in America, and Queen was another example because nobody was playing Queen. And it became the sound of K-Rock at the beginning. It was like what we kicked off everything with, and Ballroom Blitz. Do you remember Ballroom Blitz?
Oh, yeah. Wayne's World made that famous. The Ballroom Blitz. Yeah. Crucial. Well, in the band, it was in the movie Wayne's World was Crucial Taunt. I 100% forget the name of the real band who did the original one, but that's a great song though.
Yeah.
What? Now, when did you first realize that you had like a really good? I mean, obviously you were doing radio, so you knew you kind of were getting into it. But I mean, I'm sure your voice changed from you were 10 growing up. At what point did you realize, okay, I got a $1 million voice going here?
I had no idea. I had only enthusiasm. I sounded like a kid when I was 11 years old. And when I was a teenager, I sounded like a kid. I have tapes of me while I was in college that are laugh out loud funny. They're so bad. I mean, hilarious. Oh Jesus! I kind of go, that was me. It shows you if you keep trying, you can get a little bit better.
Did it ever bother you that maybe in the eyes of some that you're more famous for the voice that instead of like your acting abilities, or was that just kind of you just kind of ran with it? But your sense.
I didn't get a chance to act until I started the commercial campaigns, and that was all divine guidance or something, because that hadn't been on my agenda. My agenda always was radio. I loved radio, and that's all I wanted to do until I had so many bad experiences. I decided if I'm going to work this hard, I'm going to go for bigger stakes. So I started a production company, and my partner and I did everything. And we were at one point doing 60% of all the radio commercials on in Southern California, just because we worked and worked and worked. We knew how to write, we knew how to produce. We had our little studio. And so I was doing radio campaigns, and ended up doing like the all the advertising campaign for the Blues Brothers movie, and 48 Hours and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And while this was going on, I had been doing a chain called University Stereo, and they went from bankrupt to doing really well. And then I had a bad experience with them, and I quit. And a week later, another company, Federated, came along. And so I started doing their radio ads. And then one day, the president called me in and he said, "Yeah, we have to renegotiate. We're going to cut back on radio." And he spent 2 hours embarrassing the producer of their television commercials, saying how much he hated them. And I sat there just listening to him go over and over it, on watching it on big screen TV, and you don't know how much I hate this, and why don't you get it? Finally, he said, "Don't you understand? I want something simple and funny that makes people remember the name Federated." And I ad-libbed. How about this? I do a Dan Aykroyd bassomatic pitchman, a fast-talking pitchman, talks a mile a minute. And in the end, I say, "Federated smashes prices," and I'll smash a television with a circus hammer. Great idea. We should try it. I said, "If we try it and it works, you give me creative control, because I never want to do the same thing twice. People will want to kill me." And he goes, and he rolls his eyes. He goes, "Yeah, okay, fine." Business went up 500% that weekend, the first weekend. And we went on to do 1,100 commercials, and they were all different. And it was all me and a small team of guys, like a little Monty Python group. I had my own cameras and own lighting, and we could do guerrilla advertising. We would do 6 or 8 commercials a week. No commercial ever ran longer than 10 days for 5 years, 7 years, a lot of years. And the company grew from 16 little stores in Southern California to 78 superstores in 5 states in 4 years.
Nice.
And that gave me I'm doing all these characters. And so I'm sort of acting, I'm like doing characters, but it was like an extension of my radio because I was always doing radio theater and radio characters. And now I'm able to do it, but I had to control it so I could see how we cut it and how to make it funny. And they're quite funny, and they still are. And it was the most successful regional ad campaign in the U.S. history. So based on that, I had a chance to then start acting, but I was already 40 years old.
Okay, I got one more question before I go into the Hollywood Square stuff and then some other things. What kind of haircut were you rocking back in the 70s?
Just long and droopy.
Was it pretty much the same as the 80s? I got a question about your 80s here later, but was it kind of the same thing going through? Did you just kind of trim it up and just go with whatever? Were you cognizant about the hair back then, or did you just kind of comb it up?
No, just kind of like let it fall. I got a bunch of pictures from K-Rock and KMET, and it was long and just kind of straightish.
Okay, I'm a follically challenged myself, so
over fun.
Tier. So that does bring me to the Hollywood Squares. That's where I most remember you from. Now, how did you first hear about it? And back then, in 86, whatever. How was the audition process?
It's the weirdest thing of all of them, and it just it makes you wonder about everything in life. Let's go back to Boston. While I was in Boston, and I was really popular, and a television producer heard me and came by to meet me. He said, I had to meet you because I had to see, who you were. And I was pretty young. I was in my early 20s. And he said, we got to do some television with you. Let me put you on the air. And he was producing Dave Garroway's Tempo Boston. And I became the youth correspondent. And I would come on and talk about, Paul is dead. And I would give them all the clues and what people are saying. And they would find that just fascinating. And then they did a music show that I hosted called Gazebo Boston. And I would have on Steve Miller and other popular groups and interview them and so on. So then I get to Los Angeles. This same producer, his name is Rick Rosner, was then producing the Steve Allen show. Steve Allen, legend, genius. And he said, you'd be great as the announcer, like the sidekick, like the Ed McMahon, like a young Ed McMahon. I went, yeah, are you kidding? So I go in and I'm Steve Allen's sidekick for a period of time. And that, went through that phase and actually had a result of me leaving KHJ because they said they wouldn't promote me because they said, we don't think you're as interested in radio as you are on television. Are you kidding? It promotes you. Are you out of your mind?
Right.
And they wouldn't give me a guarantee that I would have the next promotion. So I quit. And then I went to their competition, KRLA, and they made me program director. It was my first time program director. And then we beat KHJ. And it was, a life-changing thing. Now, time goes on. And I get into the 80s, and Rick Rosner calls me, and he said, we're going to bring back Hollywood Squares. We're going to call the new Hollywood Squares. And would you do the announcer for the presentation? And I went, yeah, sure. So I really don't want to be an announcer, but sure. And so I do it, and it becomes the biggest hit of the year. It's the #1 syndicated show of the year. Everybody's talking about it. And he comes to me and said, well, we want you to do it. And I went, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be an announcer. I have a chance to do some acting, and I want to try it. I may fail, but at least I'll have a shot. So he comes back again, and he said, well, what about, and I went, no. And then he comes back again, and he finally says, what if we put you in a square and you do it from a square? And then if you're going to go off and do a movie or something, you'll be gone and we'll get a replacement. And then when you come back, you can talk about it. And we'll just make it part of the show. And I went, okay. So then I end up doing it. There was no audition process. It was like, we put you in, you do that. And I went, okay, good. Most fun I ever had in my life. Easiest job of all time, more laughs. everybody was hilarious. Joan Rivers was hilarious. Jim J. Bullock was hilarious. The guests were hilarious. And it worked like this. They would meet with you beforehand and tell you what the questions would be. Not the answers. They couldn't give you the answers, but they would give you like sample jokes and stuff. So for me, my angle was I would do bluffs and I would make up stories that made it sound like I knew what I was talking about. So my favorite example of that was we were doing shows down in the Bahamas, and John Davidson held up this little animal. He goes, "Shadoe, what kind of animal is this?" And I said, "I am so glad you asked me that. I happen to know all about this because it's indigenous to the islands and it actually drinks seawater. And it's on the Bahamian currency. It's called a slamagoy." And the woman said, "I agree." And then she went, "Wait, oh, no, wait. No, it's a raccoon." And everybody fell out. It was a raccoon. But it was like saying these things with conviction. You know, it was pretty hilarious.
No, whoa. Hold on.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, can you hear me? All right, good. I
Okay.
get feedback there. Now, did you? Hold on, I lost my track there. So you were on this. You only agreed to be on the show once they let you get on screen time. Is that what you're saying?
It was before the show ever started.
Okay.
He just kept coming back to me because he wanted me to be a part of it, and it's because of him that I got this huge success. And we didn't know we were doing a little stage in Hollywood, and had no idea. We were, it's getting good ratings, but then they decided we're going to go to Radio City Music Hall in New York, and it sold out 5 days in 2 hours. And they treated us like the Beatles. I'm telling you, it was. They would bring us in limousines with bodyguards and people clamoring and screaming and holding signs and trying to get in the car. It was insane. And we had no idea. It's like, because we're going to this little stage and now we're at Radio City Music Hall. It's like, people are screaming.
Now, did you like having the bottom center square because you didn't have to climb all them steps, or was that just the one they gave you?
Yeah, that's the one they gave me. Well, I wanted to, be the foundation of the entire game itself, or so to speak.
Now, you kind of already alluded to this, but the made-for-TV style jokes, you just kind of rolled with that. Was that I know, because for me sometimes it's a little hard to not drop F-bombs, not swear and all that. For somebody like you, was that just kind of natural and flowing? You just really had fun with it then, not custom, not having a custom.
Once you know the pattern, you know what to expect. You can mentally prepare for it, and there was always copy that I had to read, but then I knew, once you're prepared, it's a whole different deal. If you're having to just be whimsical and ad lib and then I might get anxious and not be as confident.
Now, how long would you say your hair was at its peak during the 80s? Like, how far did it get back down there?
I don't know. Too long. So that all came to as an accident because that was because of Tracks, the movie that I did.
Okay.
When I was doing Federated, the second half of Federated, after I stopped drinking and using massive amounts of drugs, I had cut my hair short. I lost 50 pounds and everything changed. And so it was, a decent look. Now they hire me for this. And it was written and produced by a guy named Gary DeBoer, who became a friend of mine. He was a really good guy, very funny guy. And he had long hair and he was worked out. And he wanted me to work out and get bulky and get big, and none of that really made any sense, except that it was his vision. So it's what they had me do. So I grew my hair out and I worked out, every day, 7 days a week with, Mr. Olympia, and got big and giant. And then after Tracks, I was just like, I don't want to be like this, but I kept the hair. It became part of this, explosion of hair.
Now, how long did it take you every day to get in the makeup and the hairspray? I mean, was that a several-hour process with all that hair and the hairspray, or how long did it take you?
No, it didn't take long at all. That's funny.
Now, did you like being the secret square? Or was that just kind of whatever, random, however they picked it? Was that kind of like, okay, I'm the secret square today? You didn't really care at all?
No, it's just part of the game. We would just go in. The hardest part about Hollywood Squares was you do 5 shows in a day. So you had to show up on the set with 5 different outfits. Oh, yeah, that's okay. You can wear that. And that was, about as hard as it got. And then we would just go out and laugh some more. And then we did 3 shows and we'd come back and do 2 more after dinner. And that would be like Saturday and a Sunday. Okay. So 10 shows in a weekend. And it was mostly laughing, a lot of laughing. Rick Rosner was a great producer and all the people he hired were great. It was very creative. And then I did the second version, but just the voice during Whoopi Goldberg's era as well.
Okay. Now the first version, how did they? Did you guys know it's ran its course? Because I read that you guys were singing "Happy Trails," but they didn't officially say it was the last version of that show. Is that true?
Yeah, say that again.
Like the first time you were on Hollywood Squares, like in '89 when they ended it. Did you guys know it was ending and then didn't tell nobody and then sang "Happy Trails" secretly as a kind of send off, or how did the first version end for you?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I was so busy doing so many different things. By that time, I was doing American Top 40, and part of that job was to be flown all over the world to promote it. So it wasn't a big letdown. It was disappointing because I loved doing it, and I loved all the people. But my mind was kept busy with all these responsibilities and this family that was growing and all the stuff of life.
Now, what were the years you were on American Top 40 from?
I guess 1987 to 1995.
Okay. That seems about right. Because I remember Casey Kasem. I remember you a little bit on there, but by the 90s, man, the countdown seemed to lose its luster. Do you remember? I mean, in your opinion, when they? I'm trying to think off the top of my head because this has got me spur thinking here right quick, but. You remember when they changed the Billboard ratings to where, before when a song would first come out, it would have to languish in the bottom and then go up. But then they changed the rules to where, if a song the first week could be number 1. Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Does that sound any familiar?
Yeah. It was very controversial at the time, and a lot of people objected, but they couldn't do anything about it. So, what are you gonna do?
Exactly. Oh, we got a question here. I was actually going to ask this, but we'll ask it now because RJ's asking it. The late show, the late, what's it called? The late show or the late show? I don't know. It was pretty late. It was with Craig Ferguson. He writes, how did you enjoy that? But I was going to ask you as well. I've noticed a lot with Hollywood and a lot of these interviews that it's kind of just not as many auditions as I would anticipate. A lot more just, hey, you're perfect for this job, do it, and that kind of thing. Is that kind of how the late show came about? And by that point, they're just picking Shadoe Stevens for a role and they know it's his role?
For that, my agent got a call from them. I had an agent in New York at the time, and he said, I got a call from the Craig Ferguson show, Late Show, and they would like you to be the announcer, and they'd like to see you about being the announcer. And I said, absolutely. When do they want me there? Tomorrow? I love Craig Ferguson. In fact, at that time, he was so new and so different and so funny. I would record his show every night and watch it back so I could see his monologues because I loved the way he thought. And I had met him once and really liked him. And so I went in and met with him, and they said, well, we would want you to come in and be here at the studio every day. Okay, sure. And anything else, if we do any bits on camera, then you're okay with it? Yeah. And the whole thing was a great joy. I'm still close. I saw Craig this morning. We have meetings on Zoom and catch up, 3 or 4 of us, and talk all the time.
Oh, nice. I loved him on Drew
He's
Carey
got
show.
a castle in Scotland. You know, he's done very well.
He's such a great career arc. I mean, randomly talk about Craig Ferguson, but he started out just as a random boss on the Drew Carey show as a British boss, and it just goes to goes back to his original accent and gets a late night gig, one of the hardest jobs to get in America if you're thinking about entertainment, and then boom, just blows up. What a great career!
Yeah, and they're really original. I loved all of his characters. I loved the gay robot. And I did the voice of that robot a few times before they hired Josh Robert Thompson, who's a genius and should get everything because he's so good.
I was rolling through a couple of.
You had Josh on your show?
I have not. No.
He's hilarious, and he does Morgan Freeman exactly like Morgan Freeman. Exactly. You cannot tell that it's not Morgan Freeman. And a bunch of other people that are just astonishing. He's really talented.
I'll have to look into that. And I was looking through your IMDb here before I started, and I got to ask you a couple cameos I remember that you were in. Do you remember the 90210 when you played a Ford disc jockey?
Yeah, and they had written that, they said, for Howard Stern, which would have nothing to do with it. But it was a Howard Stern. It was kind of Howard Stern in a helicopter. And, it's a shock jock who's broadcasting live and flies over the beach and knows everybody's business. And I loved doing it. It was a great character. I'm sure, in fact, I have clips of it on my YouTube channel. It's pretty funny. And then, of course, the helicopter crashes and they have to rescue him before he gets eaten by sharks or something. It's pretty funny.
The preposterous 90210, what a classic preposterous show. It's epic, man. And another 90s show that you did that I don't remember this role because I didn't really watch the show back then, but it says you were in Baywatch. Now, I got to ask, when you were in Baywatch, and we had a question earlier about chicks.
Talking about Baywatch? Did my brain go sideways on that?
I don't remember. I just saw that you did Baywatch. I was just going to ask you.
Baywatch was the one that was supposed to be Howard Stern. I did 90210.
Oh, okay.
Disc jockey. Okay, my brain went sideways. Okay, the brain dies first, the body follows. If I fall forward, expect the worst. It could be ugly. Okay, I think I'm okay so far.
All right, so on Baywatch, this is a question. We had a question earlier about chicks in SoCal. But in Baywatch, did you purposely mess up lines so you could just stare at bikinis all day? I mean, how was the difference in chicks between North Dakota, the Midwestern girls, and they're okay, but I mean all the hotties go to Southern California. Was that a culture shock for you? I mean, how does that somebody like you just come from the Midwest, the Plain States going down there, is that wow or what?
When I did it, I almost never saw anyone except the other people. Like when I'm being rescued, being pulled from the ocean, the shots underwater, all of that stuff. That's who I saw. Most of the time was sitting in a little, dressing room, waiting to be called and hoping to remember the lines. So it wasn't glamorous at all. And I'd been happily married forever. And
okay.
So it's this is not an issue with me because my wife is gorgeous.
Right. If you got a wife, you're why even bother with all these hotties? I feel it. No, I was seeing a couple other ones on the Larry Sanders show. Did you like playing yourself in roles, just coming in? Hey, I'm Shadoe Stevens. It's a lot more fun. Or do you like the character acting? You're somebody else. What was your more?
Being any part of the Larry Sanders show is one of the greatest things that ever happened in my life. I love that show and still think it's the funniest sitcom of all time. The writing was brilliant. The ideas were brilliant, and they had written me in as an ongoing gag, and it was what's his name? Heyo.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Can't remember his name.
Jeffrey Tambor played Hank, and Hank would say, "Yeah, my friend Shadoe Stevens. He comes over to play poker, all the time." And so it was this ongoing gag on the show. And then when Larry got sick and Hank had to take over, it's one of the funniest shows they ever did. And he said, "Yeah, I'll get my old friend Shadoe. He just lives down the street and he can come in and do my part." And so I go in and he teaches me how to say, Hank Kingsley. He goes, a little more B flat. Jim Kingsley. And yeah, perfect. You're gonna be. And so he was like really, really afraid and really anxious through the whole thing. Okay, what if people hate me? And so he goes out, and then everybody loves him, and then he becomes the biggest dick in the history of television. And it's so funny. And he did.
I saw, but it was a 2.5 minute clip yesterday. I was watching it. It's like, I haven't seen a Larry Sanders show in 20 some years. And you were just standing there, and somebody came. You were substituting for somebody. And you just had to deliver a couple lines, and you had to leave. It was just so low key, just that lowbrow funny. I would agree. It was a great fucking show. Great show, man. Love it.
Yeah.
Now, what is a role that you did that you really love in your career that not many people know about?
Probably Loose Cannon. I had this right around the 90s, before Dave's World. I was called in to they had a holding deal with me at Universal, and they wanted to develop a show for me, and I ended up working with really top people, and the idea was kind of a Lethal Weapon, Miami Vice with a sense of humor, and it was developed by a real top production team, and some of it is really funny. And Fred Silverman developed it, and like he's the one who made all three networks #1. One of the greatest producers in the history of television, and the writing team, everything about it was terrific. But Fred had a heart attack in the making of it before it was ever to go on the air. So it wasn't part of the negotiation for the promotion or when it would be put on the air or any part of it. And we just kind of got stuck there with very little promotion. And it lasted 8 episodes. Some of those episodes have great moments in it. I have little clips of that on my YouTube channel as well, just because I feel good about them. I think they're funny, and there's a lot of clever ideas that came out, and the character, which was kind of the Mel Gibson kind of character, would go undercover and go as other characters and so on. So I could do my thing that I used to do on Federated, and it was pretty great.
Now, do you get stopped in public a lot?
I have at different periods of my life. Yeah, during Federated, I couldn't walk down the street anywhere in Southern California. People shouting from cars, "Fred, hey, come party with us!" It's like, yeah, right on. And different. Hollywood Squares was like pretty big everyone in New York. That still happens in New York sometimes, but not so much. I've been out of the public eye for a while.
What role do people, if they do stop here, what do you get asked most about? What role you've done in your life?
They're all different. Some people know about all the different eras, and some appreciate the radio eras. But then there's, like you say, well, I did American Top 40. It was on in 110 countries, and they flew me all over to promote it. Last year, I went to a radio convention. This is before COVID. And a guy said to me, I'm one of the few people who actually enjoyed your version of American Top 40. Thank you. Yeah, it was on to 1 billion people a week. So I guess a couple of people thought it was okay, but I appreciate you saying that, because
what is it?
But isn't that funny? I was like, all I could do to laugh about. That's the funniest. I was speechless. I'm speechless now.
Now, what roles have you done post Late Show? I saw there was something on the History Channel. I haven't watched the History Channel in a couple of years. Just because I get lost up on YouTube and everything else. But what have you been doing since then?
I have been involved in a lot of different projects. For one short period of time, I created a radio station for Sammy Hagar called Cabo Wabo Radio. and I developed the whole format and the automation system. And I had a studio here in LA that was helped design a studio that they put in the Cabo Wabo Cantina, and came up with a way for them to have rotating radio personalities fly down there and have all expenses paid and go on the air every night. And it was wildly successful for a moment in time, and went from, it was on Live 365 streaming online, and they had 10,000 radio stations, and it went from 0 to #1 alternative station in the world in 3 months. And it was very exciting. And then I walked away from that and moved on to a couple of other things. I did an early version of Mental Radio that was in syndication and on Sirius XM for a while, that explored the inexplicable, as if done by Monty Python. And that was a lot of fun. And then I started one called Blackout Television with the most talented Black ensemble improvisational artists in the world. They do a show called The Black Version at the Groundlings. And I love these guys. I mean, they're this team that's been doing it for, I don't know, it's been 20 years by now. And they do a show where they ask the audience to come up with a movie. And then it'll be like Star Wars. Okay, we're going to do the Black version of Star Wars. And they come up with a name for it, a name for all the characters. The director, Karen Mariyama, remembers every movie ever made, scene by scene, all the characters. It's in her head. And so she'll pick out the characters. So each one this one will be this, and what will their Black name be? And then they will improvise the whole movie in front of you, and the music. And they will improvise the theme song and interstitial music, and it's absolute genius. So I contacted them, and we did 85 podcasts called Blackout Television. And that too that's on my website, shadoe.com. Worth listening to. There are some really funny things. And then we sold that to TV One as a television series, and we didn't get to series, but we did do a pilot that was quite funny, and we're real proud of that. And then after that, I started Mental Radio.
Okay. I got some silly questions here for you. That is, if some of the other questions even been silly, but I always like to end it out with some randomness. Now, have you ever been to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania on February 2nd? If so, what happened?
I have not. I'm sorry. I am so ashamed. I should have been. And it would make it's a really good idea, but no.
All right. Now, did you meet Casey Kasem when he was coming up, or when you were coming up?
Oh, yeah. I knew Casey back because Casey had been at KRLA when I went over to KRLA. And he had made the change from being a top 40 disc jockey, which is kind of up and bombastic, it's up and all full and talking fast, to a more chill kind of like real person. And so he helped me back even then, talking about you don't have to project so much, and helped me in my transition. So we were friends. And during, even before I did American Top 40, we were friends. Our daughters were about the same age. So they would come over for parties at our house, and we would go to their place and see their elaborate parties. Were crazy, where they would, bring salt water into the pool and put dolphins in it and stuff. I mean,
did you ever have him say "Zoink, Scoob"? Just sitting around.
No, I never did that once. But if I had been you,
oh yeah, I would have come up with the first part. Like, Case, do the Shaggy line, bro. Do the Shaggy line. No, who would you, besides yourself, obviously, who would you consider because you've been around, I would say, I mean, you weren't there for the golden age, the talkies, black and white era, but you've been around for, pretty much all of Hollywood's history. Who would you consider the top voice people besides right up there at the top in history, voiceover type people? Not really known. I mean, Morgan Freeman's more known of an actor, but like just known, I'm not saying you're just known for your voice. You kind of get what I'm saying here.
You know who I think is an absolute genius, and he's a friend of mine as well. And he did, back in the 80s when I had my production company, he was one of the voices for the Blues Brothers movie, for the promotion. He and Phil Hartman came in and did voices together, and they're wonderful. His name is Phil Hendry. And Phil not only has one of the most beautiful voices in the world, but he's a genius. He will do, and still does on his podcast, but on the radio, he would be the host, and they would have a controversial guest, like someone, a Latin lover who all the women loved, and he would go, and it was really offensive. And so then people would call in and hate the Latin lover, and other people would call in and love them. And he was all the voices. He was the Latin lover. He was the woman who called in hating him. He was somebody who would argue, he would interrupt himself in the middle of conversations between characters. I've never seen anything like it. Microphone, phone, microphone, just like going back and forth. And he did it improvisationally. He didn't do it from a script. And he did it every night. And he's one of my favorite people in the world. He's also helped me on Metal Radio. He just did a character for me a couple of months ago.
That's awesome. Now, are you on Cameo?
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten an unusual Cameo request? Like somebody say something, hey, Shadoe, do this, stand on top of your house and, throw stuff down at the wall or something. Anything weird? No?
Nothing weird. It usually has something to do with something I've done in the past, like tracks. Tracks is a big one because, in fact, I was just asked to do one today because Tracks had all of these lines in it. It's an action hero movie, comedy, and it would never get made today. But the story was, and at the time, I had this deal with Dino De Laurentiis, and it was a 3-picture deal. And it was my chance to be in the movies. And so I get this, and I take it really seriously, and I build myself all up, and I got the long hair. And the character is an ex-mercenary who stops the mercenary game because he wants to be the next famous Amos. And so he's going to be a cookie maker. Very excited about it. And he moves to a small town and buys a cottage and starts making cookies and runs through all of his money. So he goes into town to be a town tamer, so just to bring in some money. And there are lines in it like, garbage you dump, trash you kill. Flap your arms and suck some sky. You got 3 choices: be good, be gone, or be dead. And terrible things happen. I mean, the bad guys are so bad that just to have a good time, out of the back of their limo, they'll have baseball bats, and while people are riding bicycles along, they'll whap them and knock them off their bicycles. That's the kind of humor in Tracks. So people who
watch this. Garbage you dump, trash you kill. I'm going to use that. That's a great fucking line.
I re-edited the whole movie a couple of years ago because it was so badly put together, and it has the worst soundtrack in the history of movies. So I took all that out and I cut it down to shorter, faster, funnier. And there's like an hour version on YouTube. I think it's called Tracks Remix or Tracks something. If you want to know, I'll send it to you.
Oh, totally. So I'll definitely have to. I'm gonna have to add your channel in the subscription or the description too. And obviously go to shadoe.com for all the stuff we're talking about. We got a lot of barbecue fans, a lot of barbecue people watch the show. First off, all right, I got to ask before I ask a barbecue question. Do you eat meat?
On occasion, not a lot anymore. I just found like it made me feel logy.
All right. So if you were to have a barbecue meat that's your favorite, what's your favorite off the grill meat?
Probably ribs, pork ribs. Yeah. Barbecue. I love barbecue. Barbecue.
Good, oh yeah.
This barbecue sauce is the greatest.
Oh, yeah. Now, what is give me 3 fun things to do in North Dakota?
In the summer, water ski.
Okay.
There are lakes all over the place. Not like Minnesota, but that's what we did. And people in North Dakota have a good sense of humor. They pretty much have to be. They're, it gets 30 below.
That's cool.
You're in a lot. And you better develop a pretty good sense of humor really early on, or you're in trouble. So all of my friends were funny. and we all, came up with ideas and put on skits for the school and stuff. But in the winter it's hockey, ice skating, and not much skiing because it's pretty flat. Although we had a we lived in a river valley, so it had like hills.
Okay.
So we would have like the rope tow and go up the hill and then come down. It's really tragic, but it was fun, at the time. And then we'd go to Minnesota if we wanted a little more activity. And Minnesota is not real mountainous, but there are, but then it's 30 below too. So we would ski when it's 30 below. Stay in the morning, get real warm, get out there, ski real fast. Okay, I'm okay.
we used to do this thing where if it was snow on the road, we would get behind a car, grab the bumper. We called it book hopping. Did you guys do that?
We did that too. Absolutely. Or spin
Nice.
the car in the street. That was always a good time.
Oh, I love donuts in the winter. The first people look like me like I'm an idiot because I'll drop the kids off at school, then I'll go over to the other part of the parking lot and just knock out 5 donuts and then leave.
Yeah. It's the law.
Now, have you ever been on a game show as a contestant?
No, I don't think I have. I was on one of those game shows that is like a physical competition where you go out on the balance beam and you try and knock somebody off. And I wasn't great. I sucked.
Now, what period of music is your favorite over your 60 some odd year career? Like what genre or decade? Like 50s music, 60s music, disco, what I'm saying? Like what would be your favorite that you would listen to? Well, I mean, you might have already said it with the, the black music and the Motown and stuff, but what would you say is your favorite?
Blues.
Blues? Oh, nice.
I realized a long time ago, first of all, I would never be as cool as Dr. John. I could work at it my whole life. I could try as hard as I could, but I would never be that cool. And I had to accept that. And I would never be as cool as Muddy Waters. And I would never be as cool as any of the great bluesmen. And I never get tired of that music. And especially jump blues. Not like Stormy Monday, go drink blues, be sad. I'm talking happy, uplifting music and gospel music. I love gospel music. It's black music. It's got it all over us. We get tired. They don't.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, a lot of good white music or decent white music over the years was just, copies of the stuff that black artists,
There's a lot of white artists that do blues, and some of them are quite good, but it always sounds, it doesn't quite have the essence.
Right. It just doesn't feel as authentic and from the gut, maybe. I feel what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, with very few exceptions, there are a few white singers who, like Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt is in a class all by herself. And there are a few people like that Mick Jagger is a great blues singer, but there aren't very many. They all sound derivative to me. And I don't want to hear long guitar solos. I've been worn out by guitar solos.
65 years of guitar solos. I can only imagine, brother. Now, did you get with COVID? I know we don't want to talk about COVID much, but I always got to ask, how it transformed careers and whatnot. Did you get a learning curve on, different, Zooms and stuff when COVID hit, or just kind of already know that and following up on that, did that, not really affect you as much? Because, I mean, you're just, a lot of your stuff is not really, face-to-face anyways.
Well, I'm used to being in the studio, and I've been in studios my whole life since I was a child. So being in my own studio, being able to do anything I can think of, and having the tools, that is like my biggest thing was, okay, I'm going to be here. What am I going to do? And can I do something that is different, that I enjoy doing, that will maybe be uplifting to some other people? And so I decided to do mental radio as subversive optimism, and optimism disguised as humor. How can I do radio theater for the 21st century and make it interesting and immersive so that when you put earphones on, The voices move around, the sounds come from the back of you. Everything is always moving, and the jokes are all thrown away. Nothing is treated as funny. Everything is treated really seriously, and that's what makes it funny. And I started doing it all on my own, and then I attracted a guy that used to be my director during the Federated commercials, and he did all those commercials with me. And he's also a world-class music composer. So he gave me access to his entire library. He said, use whatever you want, it's yours. And then it opened up. Now I have cinematic audio that really sounds like it's a movie. And so I started writing things, and then I attracted writing partners and people who said, I want to contribute. Well, what can I do? And I have this little team of kind of a Mercury Theater, Orson Welles kind of team of people who do things, and they do them from home and send them to me. And I put it all together here in the studio. So now there are 18 episodes, 9 hours of original content.
Nice.
Gotten rave reviews, and it's continuing to grow. And while we're working away at it, about 6 months in, Vin DeBona called me. And Vin is the wildly successful TV producer who created America's Funniest Videos. And that's been on the air in prime time, #1 for over 30 years. He owns the whole company. He can do what he wants. Nice. I love everything you're doing. It's funny as hell. It's the most original thing I've heard in 20 years. We have to do a television version. And we've been working on this, how to take this audio theater and put it into a television format for 9 months now. And we're getting real close. And it looks promising.
Nice. All right. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to, sing your projects and chat with you?
Well, I'm at shadoe.com. My artwork is on Shadoe Art, that's SHADOE, shadoeart.com. And so I have this whole art side thing that I do. And then mentalradio.net. And Mental Radio also is also available anywhere podcasts are heard. Or you can get the app, and the app is free. This is art for art's sake. I'm not making money doing this. This is because it's a passion project with people who love doing things that are completely different from anything you've ever heard before. And it takes you away. You can't do it and do anything else. If you're listening, you can't like you do in an interview, you can have
right.
And you can be making dinner. This is like an immersive experience watching a movie in your head. And then the movies keep changing because they're little short stories. It might be 5 minutes long or 10 minutes long. And they take you on this journey, and then it leads to something else. And we just assume that no one has any attention span anymore. So
they don't. Trust me.
Yeah, and then even the jingles. The jingles are sound like real rock, real blues, real 1930s Disney, and they make fun of being afraid. The lyrics are like, don't forget the world is ending, don't forget to be afraid, don't forget to keep pretending you got it made. It's like happy music, but it's what they're telling you all the time on television and on media. Be afraid, it's doomsday, the end of the world. In the real world, it's in the make-believe world. It's zombies are coming, zombies and the creature from the Black Lagoon and gorillas, and God knows what's happening next. Other dimensions and from outer space, aliens. So we're making fun of all that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, if you're out there and you're way too into zombies, relax in the zombies. It's never going to happen. Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Shadoe Stevens for joining us, sir. It's been a pleasure. I love talking to you. I loved growing up with you. Here it's it's 30 years in the making, kind of in my head. It's been a pleasure. And come out next week if you're watching. Next Friday we have, not tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have a fun show, but next Friday we got Luna's the rapper. I've got 5 on it rappers going to be with us. So thank you so much, Shadoe, for joining us. I appreciate it so much, my brother.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Right.